Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ number 5, the series where I answer all your knife questions, big or small. Today we've got some cool stuff to talk about. We're talking about some big cheap flippers, some talk about sharpening and factory edges, and even some Bushcraft gear recommendations. Let's do it. All right, before we jump in, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to ask your own question for this series, make sure to leave it in the comments, and maybe we'll feature it in a future episode. First question today comes from D. Doubt. He says, a coworker is looking for a $50 or less knife, preferably made in USA, but not necessarily. He likes a flipper and has larger than average hands. So that's actually a pretty difficult list of things to try and satisfy. A large made in the USA flipper for $50 or less is pretty slim pickings. The only one that really comes to mind to me is the Buck Vantage series. These do come in just under 50 bucks, or right at 50 bucks, I think. Two sizes. The larger one, of course, isn't super large though. As everyone on this channel is probably used to hearing me say, I have slightly larger than average hands. I have just barely enough on this handle to get a full grip. So if you have really big bare paws, might be a little on the smaller side. Still a good knife design overall though. Definitely has one of my most favorite pocket clips in the industry on any knife. It's mounted here from the back, nice and deep carry, and it's reversible. Just a real elegant way to do a reversible deep carry pocket clip. The flipping action on these, I will say, however, has never been known as the best. It usually takes a little bit of wrist action to get it to open fully. Between that and the slightly smaller size here, and again, it is a full-size knife, but if you have really big hands, it might be a little too small. So I've got a couple other recommendations instead. First one, going right to the extreme, I've got the CRKT M21. This version right here, also $49.95, so right under that $50 mark. And this one should definitely have plenty of handle length, even for big hands out there. Now you do give up American-made construction with this, but it is an American company at least. Blade on this, almost 4 inches, 3.875. Steel is decent, 8CR14 MOV. Now the flipping action on these is really good. Some of the less expensive versions of this, or of the M16, don't always have the best action either, but this one, quite good. One thing you'll notice here also, we've got an auto locks safety. It's essentially just a secondary lock that prevents the liner lock from being disengaged. You do have to pull that back in order to disengage the liner lock. Can be a little bit tricky until you get used to it, but I know some folks like to just kind of disable that and have a more conventional liner lock. But this is a really cool option for that in that price range. Now one more to show you though, it's a little bit smaller. This is the Civivi Praxis. And I actually pulled the wrong one when I pulled it off the shelf. This is one of the more expensive versions with a Damascus blade, but you can get this with a stainless 9CR18 MOV blade for about $42.50. And I know that's a big string of numbers, but essentially that'll give you kind of 440C levels of performance. Blade on this, 3.75, a little bit smaller of a handle here. I'll hold it up next to that CRKT so you can see the difference, but definitely gives you a good amount to hold on to. I've got a pretty full grip myself, but it's just a really good knife design overall. Civivi puts their stuff together really well. You always get a nice fine edge, and you've got ball bearings in the pivot as well, which is something only in the last couple years we've been starting to see in this sub $50 price range. But the reason I wanted to mention this also, even though slightly on the smaller side from that M21, is if you kind of want the best that you can get in the sub $50 range, it's probably one of these Civivis or the CJRBs out there that you want to look at. All right, our next question comes from David Crone. He says, what should you do with an edge that's new from the factory and kind of sharp, but not really? Strop, reprofile, thanks. Thanks for the question, David. I've got to say there's almost never a time where stropping a good or even decent edge can't improve it, and that's even the case with factory edges. So yes, I would definitely strop the edge first. That's going to go a long way to refining whatever the factory has done and maybe getting it a little bit better. If that's not quite doing what you need, you can add a little bit of wet dry sandpaper to that on top of your strop to kind of bring that burr back when you're like an actual sharpening process. I actually did a video on stropping. We'll leave a link to that. It'll give you a good idea of how to handle that if you need to. If none of that works, then yeah, I would go to reprofile, but hopefully stropping will take care of everything you need. In terms of reprofiling, you can use something like the guided systems like the KME or the Wicked Edge. Those do a really good job. As for me, I actually use my knife grinder most of the time, but you probably don't have a knife grinder. Before I had that, however, I was a really big fan of the Ken Onion Work Sharp with the blade grinding attachment. It really makes quick work of reprofiling jobs, but just make sure you practice with a less expensive knife that you don't care quite so much about before you put your more expensive knives on there. Just make sure you're comfortable with the system. As for a good quality strop, I do feature this in that video. I always like to recommend the JRE Industries strop bat. This one's still wrapped up, but these are really nice. They're made in the USA for just 35 bucks. Hand turned from a single piece of wood, and then 4 pieces of leather, each already, or 3 of them impregnated with your stropping compound already, and then a final bare piece of leather for the last step to put that final refined edge on there. Love this thing. It's really a really good price, especially when you consider the quality. And even if you have never stropped before, even if you use any other type of sharpening system, get a good strop and do that at the end of whatever you do for your normal sharpening routine. Bonus suggestion for you guys. If we're talking about factory edges, there's a few out there. A lot of companies do really good factory edges, but I've gotten asked before who I think does the best, and I gotta say Hogue I think takes the cake. They do a really nice convex edge. It's highly refined, and I've almost never picked up a Hogue that wasn't absolutely hair-splitting sharp right out of the box. Close second, Cold Steel actually, which kind of surprised me too. There's always exceptions to everything, but I think on their folders, they do a real consistently good job. All right, this next question was emailed to us from James. He says he needs some recommendations. I'd like to get an intro Bushcraft fixed blade between 40 and 75 bucks. He's done some research and has a list and wanted a recommendation. He's got lots of condors in his list, but he also asked, I don't know much about 1075 compared to things like 440C and D2. Any thoughts would be helpful. All right, I'll address the steel question first, I think. And I say if you kind of want the full Bushcraft experience, quote unquote, whatever that means, go for a simpler carbon steel. For one thing, they're going to be easier to maintain, easier to care for than something like 440C or D2, especially if you're out in the field and needing to do some resharpening. Now the edge retention on 440C or D2 is probably going to be better than 1075 or 1095. It should be better, but the 1095 is going to give you more toughness. And on something that's going to have a Scandi grind like a Bushcraft knife, you probably want a little bit more toughness, especially behind the edge on that style of knife. Trade-off, of course, the edge won't last as long on the carbon steel, and it will be, of course, prone to corrosion or rust. But kind of learning to take care of your tools, maintaining the edge, keeping them protected from the elements is all part of the kind of self-reliant mentality that Bushcraft really espouses. So if you want the quote-unquote full experience, simple carbon steel is definitely the way to go. Now the other advantage you're going to get from a carbon steel, at least a simple alloy carbon steel, is if you have some naturally occurring flint, you can actually strike a spark with the blade of your knife. And that's something that more complex alloys usually can't do very well or even at all. And that's especially true of a stainless steel knife. Now I'm not talking about a ferro rod or the ferrocerium rod or fire steel that you can strike with a crisp spine, which a lot of Bushcraft knives have. Any crisp edge can actually do that. You don't need a carbon steel to do that. But now down to my recommendation for a beginner Bushcraft knife. The Condor Pterosaur, just a little bit over 40 bucks at this point in time. Yeah, $42.50 right now is a fantastic choice. It may not be as sexy as some of the kind of wood-handled versions out there, but it's very durable. You've got a full tang blade of 1095 carbon steel. Not quite as tough as 1075, but it will hold an edge a little bit longer. But good length, just over 4 inches, good thickness at about 1/8 of an inch, and just a solid design. It's going to fit a lot of different hand sizes very well, and you got a great shaped blade for pulling off those Bushcraft tasks. It's even got a really nice sheath, pops right in there. It's very resistant to water. You do have a little bit of a leather bit here, but it's ambidextrous, can go on either side of the body, doesn't take up a lot of room. It's just a really nice package for not a lot of money at all. All right, our next question is from Dead Man's Hand A's and Eights. KnifeCenter, I know you do some bushcrafting. What is your go-to camp saw? Got the Silky 170. and I'm wanting something a little bit bigger. Could you help me out? Absolutely. And for me, Silky Bush, or what the heck is this called? Silky Big Boy 2000, full stop. I gotta say, I've never really been satisfied with any kind of handheld saws until I got a Silky. They're just super fast cutting, highly efficient. They just work so well. I mean, you've already got a smaller Silky, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, the reason I like the Big Boy is it's got a good bit of reach here. It's about a 14.5-inch blade, I think. Yeah, just over 14 inches of teeth on this, but it still folds up small enough that you can fit it in the pack. And this is about as large as you can get from Silky until you get to the big Katana Boy series of saws, but those are big two-handed affairs, and they're significantly more expensive than this. This is only about 70 bucks right now. Now, a lot of people do like to call those Katana Boys kind of human-powered chainsaws, and it's really not that big of an exaggeration. I've actually got some old video of a Blade Sports competition cutter going head-to-head versus a Silky Katana Boy at chopping through a 2x4 versus sawing through it, and the Silky actually beat him every single time. It's really impressive. But the design of these teeth is just phenomenal. It's a Japanese-style saw, so it only works on the pull stroke, so you're not actually pushing in. They don't get gummed up. I've never had the teeth of these ever get gummed up. It does a real good job of clearing the sawdust. It locks into the open position. It's got a secondary position for stuff where you need to go like close to the ground or at some sort of odd angles. It's just gonna work every time, and I never go out into the woods without mine. All right, next question from Brett P. He says, I'm new to the knife world. What are your thoughts on a pull-through sharpener for field sharpening? Field sharpening specifically. He says, do you have any suggestions for beginners for maintaining an edge when camping or out and about? Pull-through sharpeners, they're kind of a mixed bag for me. Yes, they are field expedient. They're very quick and easy to use, but they're not really good for your edges long term. They remove a lot of metal and they don't leave the most refined edge. You can do a lot better if you get a little bit of practice in. For that reason, check out our whetstone sharpening video and that strop sharpening video I mentioned earlier, and get yourself one of these, the WorkSharp Guided Field Sharpener. These are made in the USA. They're a pretty good price, just 30 bucks right now. And you can certainly find cheaper sharpeners out there, but there is a lot to this particular mechanism. Now you've got two different grits of diamond plating here, or diamond plated sharpeners here. Diamond coated, you know what I mean. And these plates actually are removable as well, so you can clean them a little easier. But they also come with angle guides here. So if you're using a more a traditional beveled knife, you can actually lay your knife on that bevel and use it as a guide. Of course, if you're using something like a Scandi grind, you're just gonna lay that bevel flat on the stone and ignore those guides. But that's where you would start on these diamond abrasives. Then you can transition to this ceramic rod at the top that has a few different sections there. Again, angle guides here to help you out. And then on the bottom, it's even got a strip of leather loaded with black compound as a strop. So you have pretty much everything you need in a pocket-sized package to take out with you in the field. If it's a little bit too big for your pocket, it's definitely easy to find space for that in your pack. We've also got a small little ceramic section out here. There's a lot you can do with this. Just learn how to use it. All right, last but not least, we've got something from Adam Foster here. He says, Question, how many more knives will I need to buy before I'm satisfied and girls like me? Right now, I'm an empty shell of a man with a few nice knives. Do chicks dig swords? That's all the time we've got today for Knife AQ number 5. Love to hear what you thought of my answers down below in the comments. And if you got one of your own questions, make sure to leave it below, as I said, and maybe we'll be able to feature it in a future installment. Now, if you want to get your hands on any of these cool pieces, we will leave links in the description, and those will take you over to KnifeCenter.com. While you're over there, make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program too, because if you're gonna buy one of these cool items, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and leave your questions below. See you next time.